are Heather and Paul Christie.
And for over 12 years, we've worked with executives and entrepreneurs to accelerate change in every aspect of their business.
Because we are in the fastest paced business environment that anyone has ever seen before.
So join us for the Evolve to Win show.
Welcome to the Evolve to Win show, produced in partnership with Gulf Shore Business Magazine. My name is Heather.
And I'm Paul.
And we're happy to have you with us today. This show is all about helping you to accelerate growth in every aspect of business and of life. Today we want to talk about getting out of the funk. So, do you ever get yourself in a funk, Paul?
I do. But I want to bring something up, just before we get into this topic. How much do you enjoy doing a podcast with your husband?
Oh my gosh, I so enjoy it. It's so much better than doing a podcast by myself. So thank you for bringing that up.
And if you remember, Heather was doing the Mastermind podcast by herself. And
for a year.
And I was always helping produce that with her and coming up with topics and things like that. But we decided that, why keep me in the shadows when I could be,
I wanted to put your face right out there in front of him because you got a face made for camera.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
A face for radio.
No. Okay, we're talking about how to get out of a funk. And, I can actually speak to this personally because I was in one yesterday, as recently as yesterday.
Yes, you were.
And the reason that this is really important for all of you is you think about, staying ahead of the game. We're in the fastest paced business environment that we've ever seen before. And we don't really have the luxury of getting in a funk and staying in a funk. So I know that you're all going to get into a funk and you're all going to have those off days. What we're really hoping to do is help you shift that to maybe an off moment or a couple of moments rather than a bad day.
Yeah.
So
define a funk.
Define a funk. Well, let me tell you what it feels like.
Funk's a funny word, isn't it?
Yeah, it is kind of a funny word. I can tell you. So just yesterday, I was feeling this. And, for me, I've worked on this particular part of my personal and professional growth for so many years that I don't struggle with it nearly as much as I used to. I used to not just have a bad day. I might even have a bad couple of days, possibly a bad week if I allowed something to derail me.
Yeah.
And it used to be quite common that I would stay in be frustrated about whatever was frustrating me for way too long, not recognizing that I had full control over my emotions.
And you are my hero as far as just being able to, when I can see you could potentially have a pretty rough day, you just power through. And I give you a lot of credit for it because I do not have that ability to just power through. I'm kind of a wimp that way. But, you did have a little bit of a funk yesterday. I could totally tell you were when you don't do anything in a day, it is highly unusual. That I could probably count on one hand how many times that's happened in the last 10 years.
Yeah. And so the reason I wanted to do this podcast is because I knew better. I knew what to do to pull myself out of that funk. I did finally do it in the afternoon, but I let myself stay there longer than I have in a long, long time. And I thought, you know what? If I'm not using these strategies to pull myself out, how many other people are going through those kind of days? It sucks to be having a day like that.
Sometimes it feels kind of good.
Well, it doesn't actually feel good. You may think at the moment that you just want to stay there, but the reality is nobody wants to be there. It feels terrible. You feel useless. You feel depressed. You start questioning everything. I don't know. First of all, I had very good reason to be there, and most of us too, right? When you get into that place and have that bad day, you probably have very good reasons for being there. And we don't know what other people are going through in any given day. We don't know what they've just experienced outside of work a lot of times. And there are people who have certain behavioral styles where they'd never share it. There are people out there who have such a great poker face, you wouldn't know if it's the best day of their life or the worst. So, sometimes we got to just not only give ourselves space, but really recognize that there are other people who are potentially going through some really tough times outside of work.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point that, we all have this facade on. Not many people are wide open, an open book. And when they are, it's kind of like, whoa, too much, right? The too much information again. But it's always interesting to me when we're in training sessions with teams and, we may do an icebreaker to start off the conversation with a group of people. Like, what was something that made a massive impact in your life, or a person, or an episode, or something that happened in your life that really changed you to become a better person? And you hear about these amazing stories from people, and so we never know what's underneath. And most of the time, we just assume that people don't have much going on, but they have a lot of things going on. And it could be that you have a family member in the hospital, you could have aging parents, you could have something that's with your kids. It could be anything, but that puts you into a funk. And too many days in a funk can be a problem. So we want to help in this podcast, on this show. We want to just talk a little bit about what are some of the things that you can do.
Some strategies to get you out of that funk.
Strats.
Okay. So let me share my funk. I'm going to share the personal story about why I was in a funk.
Okay.
So on July 21st, 1985, I had a very dear friend who was raped and murdered, and I was 15 years old at the time. And sorry to just drop that bomb just like that, but this was a significant event in my childhood that really, in part shaped who I am today.
Yeah, you were 15 years old, right?
I was 15.
Yeah.
And I was actually out of town when it happened. I was visiting my grandparents in Connecticut for my birthday, which was July 22nd. And that was the day that they found Christie Wesselman. And I got the phone call from my parents that evening letting me know. So, at the age, I'm not sure there's any age that would allow someone to, figure out how to handle that. Because it is as tragic as you can imagine. So I didn't handle it well, as would be expected, and for a number of years I didn't handle it well. I had a lot of anger. You talk about having a bad day. I had a lot of bad days and used that as really the reason for me to have bad days. Mm-hmm. So it was probably 15, 16 years before I finally kind of dealt with that. Because, that was back in the day where the schools didn't just send in the counselors to help us all. So we all kind of just had to figure out how to get through it on our own. Mm-hmm. So why am I bringing this up? Well, about 2 years ago, the guy who killed her was found through DNA. And it was just seriously a miracle. It was great work by our former state's attorney of DuPage County, who helped to pass legislation that required anybody who had a violent felony as a condition of parole, they had to submit their DNA. And that's exactly what happened with this guy. He had committed another violent act against his wife at the time. Mm-hmm. So they forced him to give a DNA sample as a condition of his parole. And when that match came through, that was in September 2 years ago, it seriously, it just rocked all of our worlds, because we never thought, that's 30 years after the date that she was murdered, we got word that there was a DNA match. So absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Fast forward, it took almost 2 years of preparation to get this ready for trial. Trial was supposed to start on Tuesday of this week. So I booked my flights to go out, and everything was set. The entire case hinged on his DNA, because that was really the only evidence that was supportive of a conviction. They were also going to bring in some past violent crimes, some victims who he had hurt badly. What surprised all of us is that out of the blue, I got a phone call on Wednesday night from a good friend who said, you've got to get on an airplane and come out here Thursday morning because he's pleading guilty. And so he actually pled out, and he received 80 years, which is going to be a lifetime in jail for him.
Yeah, because he's what, 60?
He's 64
or something like
64.
that now?
So at his first eligibility for parole, he'd be 104, and you can trust me on this, that man will not live even close to that long. So I flew out on a moment's notice and went and was there with the family and friends for that guilty verdict. And then this past week on Tuesday, so as of this recording, we're on Friday right now, On Tuesday was the sentencing hearing.
Mm-hmm.
Everything went just as it should. He got his 80 years. A number of my friends and Christie's family got together and celebrated the closure of this really horrific situation. And so it was, 2 days after that I just found myself just really struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Just feeling off, feeling down, feeling sad. And I know that the reason that I was feeling that is because I was thinking so much about all of that. And I was putting myself back in 1985 and reliving a lot of that emotion. So it was no wonder that I was having a down day.
Mm-hmm.
Like I knew that I
You
had
get to have a down day about that.
I think I certainly deserved a down day, and part of that too is just really thinking about the family and
If
what
you're having a
they've
down
been
day, just
going
think
through.
about that story.
Yeah.
Think about the parents that have to go through that.
Yeah.
33 years later, that's pretty incredible. So
Both her
but
mom
yes,
and her dad were
you
there
were,
for that.
You had all the right in the world to have a down day, and you did.
And you were very, very supportive. Like, rather than try to pull me out of it, as maybe you would typically do, you just really let me be exactly where I was in the moment. And I was aware of the fact that I was having a down day. And I even said to myself, and I think I even said out loud to you, look, I probably need to be really kind to myself right now and just let this be whatever it is. But I knew the strategies to get myself out if I wanted to get out. And the number one strategy was to shift what I was thinking about to something different, to something positive. And so I could have done that at the very first sign that I was feeling down. But I didn't. I got on Facebook, and my whole class has this group page that really is just for all of us. And we all stayed really close together. And I think in large part is because of this tragedy and losing Christie that we maintained such a close relationship. So rather than me just getting to work and changing my mindset and focusing on something different, I'm on that page, I'm reading stories about her and, all happy stories, so that's happy. But I know that I was focusing way too much to be able to pull myself out of it.
Yeah.
So I also know.
So it's really, that first strategy is making that decision.
Just
because we
making a
know
decision.
because we
Yes.
know we become what we think about, and so you keep thinking about something, you keep thinking about that tragedy, it's going to put you in a funk, it's going to put you in a negative space. So make the decision to think about something else. That's not easy, especially when you have things going on, but some people have the ability to compartmentalize things that happen in their lives, and we all can be better at that, of really being able to say, how do I take this thing that's going on in my life, put it to the side, and do what I need to do. And that's a huge leadership skill that many of the the elite, like SEAL teams and things like that, they have the ability to compartmentalize all the things that are going on, and they are able to just solely focus on a particular area. So
And it's so funny you said that, because the first thing that made me think of was Navy SEAL Team 6.
Yep.
When we met Mark Owen, who was one of the members of Navy SEAL Team 6, who was responsible for, among many other things, responsible for taking out Osama bin Laden.
And what was the other one?
Captain Phillips.
Oh, Captain
He
Phillips.
also was on Captain
you saw that Captain
Phillips
Phillips movie,
rescue
which is
tour.
an amazing rescue and a pretty amazing movie. If you haven't seen that, put it on your list to watch. Maybe do it this weekend.
So Mark Owen, who was a member of Navy SEAL Team 6, was telling us about how he had that ability, and he actually would show us physically about whatever it was that happened in the moment. If he needed to put that to the side, he actually had this method of wrapping it up, compartmentalizing, setting it here so that he could get back on mission and be in the moment. And can you imagine, in some of the most critical moments, life and death situations, something went wrong? Like when they flew into the compound in Pakistan to find bin Laden, they came in and crashed the helicopter. And
the tail of the helicopter hit the wall.
Hit the barrier wall, yeah.
Yeah, and it just collapsed. It just fell to the ground.
Yeah, crash landing.
Yeah.
But it crashed in a way that they were still able to get out of the chopper and get into the compound. But can you imagine something like that? Like, nobody sat there and whined and complained about the crash landing.
No.
Right?
They weren't in a funk about
They
that.
didn't get in a funk like, oh my God, I can't believe we crashed.
They're
This
like,
isn't how we
plan
practiced
B.
it. No, instead they're like, crash landing, put that aside, get on mission.
Yeah.
So it's about, a lot of this. When you think about your stress or anxiety, it's either coming from your past or your future, because in the moment, if you actually were able to just get yourself in the present moment is truly a gift for all of us, right? So finding these strategies to get yourself out of your past and into the moment are really critical. So for you, as you said, it's hard to make that decision, right? It's hard when you're in that funk to make the decision to shift it, because sometimes you feel, I don't know, this crazy need to be in that spot. But really, there's no reason to stay there. There's no power in getting stuck in a funk.
No.
There's nothing good about it. So the faster you can have the awareness and the recognition that you're in the funk, the faster you can get yourself out of it by making the decision. Now, the decision may be hard to make, but I promise you, once it's done, you move on. Now, my easiest and best strategy, which I did not do yesterday, although I certainly could have, easiest and best strategy is to find one of your mentors, motivational speakers, like find someone who you really connect with, who has an audio or a video on YouTube or a podcast, and you get that thing playing in your ears immediately. So for me, one of my all-time favorites, like I can't possibly stay in a bad mood when I'm hearing Earl Nightingale's voice on YouTube or, on
Do you have a
an
crush
MP3.
on Earl Nightingale?
Well, I don't, and unfortunately, he's
Yes,
no
you
longer
do.
with us. But I totally have a professional crush on him because he was like the founding father of personal growth.
If you
it's
haven't
just-
listened to
oh my
Earl
gosh.
Nightingale, I know the name sounds kind of weird, but just go on YouTube, look up Earl Nightingale, and listen to The Strangest Secret. And
my favorite.
yeah, it's about 30 minutes long.
And it's
And
like
it
it's
is
old
so-
school, so be very clear that he's politically incorrect the whole way through. But just get past it. I mean, that doesn't bother me.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just so it just resonates to the core.
It
Like,
does.
it really just
like you can't help but smile and feel good. So that's
So
a
finding
strategy
okay.
I know 100% of the time works. And then there are others who I love, who I could listen to that would pull me right out, like a Zig Ziglar or a Tony Robbins, right? Like if you want to just get, change your thinking, change your mood, change your physiology. Is what
Yeah,
Tony Robbins
can
would
I
say.
give a third one now? So the first one was, just what was the first one?
First one was make a decision.
Make a decision. The second one is, get on YouTube or hit Audible or, whatever.
Find your
a
person.
podcast. Or,
Yeah.
hey, you could listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
And then the third one I think is, yes, what you were saying is what Tony Robbins says is change your physiology. So get out. So if you're at work, and you are in a total funk, take your 10, 15-minute break and go out for a walk. If it's too cold outside, maybe that's what you need to wake you up,
Yeah. Or maybe you could move down to Southwest Florida.
Yeah, but just get out, move around a little bit, and take a nice fast-paced walk, or do something that's changing your physiology, that's changing the way that you feel. Because if you feel better, you will start to feel better in your brain and in your head and in your actions as well.
Yeah, so I think changing your physiology is a massive way to get yourself out of a funk. Now I've got another one. Now this is the one that I actually implemented yesterday afternoon.
Oh, okay.
And that was meditation. So meditation is really just taking that quiet time and getting in touch with the moment. It's really getting into the present. And for those of you who are kind of freaked out that I just said meditation because you feel like it's too out there, too woo-woo, I used to be like that. And what I can promise you is when I started learning about the benefits of meditation, I went all in on it. So I meditate almost every day. And so that is absolutely a way to just take yourself out of the past, out of the future, get into the moment, and really just de-stress. So I did such a good job at that yesterday that I did a meditation. Now, mind you, I had the whole week blocked off for the trial. So I had no appointments on my calendar, and that never happens.
Yeah.
So I actually got to have an off day. And so I think I meditated around 2:00 in the afternoon was when I finally pulled myself together, and then I slept for 2 hours. And you know what? I needed it. Clearly, my body needed to shut down. And that was part of, probably part of why I was having a hard time, because I had a big lack of sleep.
Just around sleep, I think this is a really important point as well, is that especially as you get older, or if you're working a lot or whatever, but I notice as I get older now, that the most important thing, everybody talks about what you're eating and are you exercising and everything, but I think sleeping is the most important part, because you think about how our body has to regenerate itself every single day, and if we're not giving it enough sleep, if we're not taking care of it and giving that downtime, and if you find yourself that I think everybody kind of has an idea of how much sleep they need to feel good. Like I'm in the 7 to 8 hour sleep. Probably 8 is the best for me too. And we know people that sleep like 4 or 5 hours. I'm always like, really? Can you feel that good at 4 or 5 hours? Now, maybe they do, maybe they don't. I have no idea. But we all kind of know where we are. So where are you? What's your number? And so if you know you're going back to back to back days and I know for me, if I go 2 days back to back, not getting the sleep, maybe it's 6 hours, I am, by that third day, I'm really tired. I'm kind of wiped out. My brain is shot. So getting those extra hours of sleep, but making sure that you schedule that time for you to get, the nap. If you can get a nap in, they're great. Everybody makes fun of like you're old, but some of the best things you can do is to take, and I understand that most people can't at work or whatever like that, but when you get home, if you can take a 20-minute nap, and not go into that full REM, where you're just completely out drooling on yourself. Where you're
20 minutes is the
20 minutes
scientifically
and you feel
proven
good.
Amount of time.
And I know I do, and I take a lot of naps.
Yeah, you do more than most.
But they're good.
So no, this is a really great point. Is you are much more likely to have a down day or get into a funk if you're lacking sleep, and sometimes you just need to plug yourself back in, right?
Yeah,
like
totally.
You'd never think of letting your cell phone run dry, right? Like you'd never let that battery run out completely, and yet we do it to ourselves all the time. So, okay, now go back to my situation this last week. I think that I probably experienced every emotion in the book within 1 week's time. And by the way, can I just mention that in between flying out to Chicago for the guilty verdict and then the sentencing on the following Tuesday, that weekend on Saturday, we had the entire family in town to celebrate my grandmother and my grandfather's 100th birthdays, the anniversary of
a lot of
would have been
emotion
their
in
birthday.
that too. Yep.
Oh my gosh, so I went through so much emotion that even if I were getting my 8 hours per night, when you go through that kind of emotion, your body really needs maybe just a little bit more. So just be conscious of that. And then the last thing I'll say for tricks or techniques for how you get yourself into a great place. Out of the funk. The other one that I use consistently that works so quickly is just going to gratitude. So that is a strategy that will work 100% of the time. Is if you're feeling unhappy, it's because you're thinking something that's making you unhappy, right? You're focused on something that's making you feel sad or depressed or anxious or whatever it is. So if you shift your mindset and just go to gratitude and start thinking about all of the things that you're grateful for, you can't actually be in a bad mood when you're in a place of gratitude. So that is a surefire technique and something that you can pull out at any given point in time. I like to start every single morning with what I call the gratitude snooze. So every morning when I wake up, the very first place I go is to all the things that I'm grateful for.
That's great. So let's just sum this up.
Getting out of a funk. Can you remember?
I think I can remember.
Okay, number one.
So number one is to make it. So this is how to get yourself out of a funk, right?
Yes.
And so number one is making that decision. So making the decision. It's just like with procrastination. It is making a decision, and that's going to start to set the wheels moving forward, right?
Okay.
Is that right?
Okay.
Right.
Squirrel.
All right, go on.
All
and
right.
number two.
So make the decision to get out of the situation. Number two is what?
Number two, why are you asking me?
Number two is you want to find somebody who makes you happy and listen to a YouTube, a podcast, turn on your favorite song, like get something playing in your ears that makes you happy. Okay?
Yep.
So that's number two. Number 3
Number 3 was going out for a walk or changing your physiology. Right.
Yes.
So just doing something if you're at work.
Get up and move.
Yep.
Number 4, meditation.
Meditation.
So
yes.
stop. And by the way, for those of you who are not into meditation or you don't really know how to do it, there's plenty of guided meditations. But what you can do is simply just sit in some place for 15 minutes and just be aware of your breathing. And that alone will take you into a completely different space. So meditation's number 4. And then number 5 is going to gratitude. You can never, never lose by going to gratitude. So thank you so much for tuning in to this Evolve to Win show, produced in partnership with Gulf Shore Business Magazine. If you liked it, please share it. And you can connect with us at heatherchristie.com or throughout our social media channels. We'd love to hear from you. If you have other tips or tricks that you use to get yourself out of a funk, please share them with us. We'd love to hear from you.
Great. Thanks. Have a great day.
Take care.